The United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, defines gender-based violence as violence that is directed against a woman because she is a woman or that affects women disproportionately. Despite progressive measures and policies to eradicate the vice, many women continue to be victims of gender-based violence through exposure to social inequalities, discrimination, and retrogressive cultural practices that continue to curtail enjoyment of freedoms that come with womanhood.
Violence against women and girls remains endemic.
Statistics indicate that half of women aged between 15 and 49 years in Kenya have experienced physical, psychological, or sexual violence. Many such cases go unreported. Sadly, though, even bold survivors of gender-based violence who attempt to pursue justice get frustrated in the maze of administrative and legal bureaucracy and give up.
In Kenya today, the prevalence levels of the violence are high and cut across the entire fabric of the society. These occur against the existence of both national and international legal policies and institutional frameworks.
The impacts of gender-based violence are far-reaching. Most gender-based violence survivors live with major scars, both physically and emotionally. Secondary parties within their circles, such as children and extended families, also suffer the brunt of psychological trauma and stigma in Kenya. The country faces momentous challenges in prevention and response to gender-based violence. To begin with, the police service lacks specially trained staff to support comprehensive collection of evidence and support survivors in the reporting process. Furthermore, there are few, if any, rescue centers or temporary shelters to secure survivors at police stations.
We also have inadequate facilitation of survivors by police due to lack of vehicles and facilities at the stations. Because sometimes when the cases are reported, the demand is on the survivors to ensure that the police get to the scene to investigate the crime.
Corruption is a serious challenge that has impacted on the use of the P3 and PRC forms. And even more disturbing is the lack of facilitation of survivors in the pursuit of justice through the collection and maintenance of the integrity of forensic samples during court processes. The National Gender and Equality Commission is mandated to promote gender equality and freedom from discrimination for its target groups, who include women, youth and children, the elderly, persons with disabilities, minorities and marginalized groups. The Commission is responsible for monitoring, facilitating and advising on the implementation of various international and regional commitments on the use of gender-based violence which affect the rights of women and children. This includes the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa. One of the key strategic objectives of the Commission is to provide comprehensive and adequate response to sexual and gender-based violence.
This is one of the constitutional commissions with the mandate to monitor, to audit, to ensure that Kenya realizes gender equality and freedom from discrimination.
It is against the backdrop of the challenges facing the eradication of gender-based violence that the Commission, through the convention of the National Sub-Cluster Working Group, felt the need to bridge the gap and create awareness about gender-based violence and the legislation that exists, and the collective responsibility of each duty bearer towards gender-based violence. Thus, on the 10th of December 2014, a national campaign to hold the various sectors accountable in provision of gender-based violence services, dubbed Keeping the Promise, was launched. The Keep the Promise campaign emanates from the need to constantly remind duty bearers to not only speak about gender-based violence, but also act to reverse the situation.
We came as a group working on the sexual gender-based violence and agreed that we must have a very, very strategic campaign, a campaign that will give information to Kenyans, a campaign that will tell Kenya more about the existing legal framework, and a campaign that would give right information to Kenyans, because the Constitution does provide for the right to information. What we find is that most of the survivors do not know these laws exist, do not know what to do when they are violated.
The campaign, whose theme is Prevent Gender-Based Violence, Protect Survivors and Respond, will run for 3 years, with the objectives being to strengthen action and accountability by state and non-state actors on their mandate in relation to gender-based violence work, strengthen implementation of the various policies and legislations on gender-based violence in Kenya through dissemination and awareness creation, and to assess existing policy, legal and service delivery infrastructure for the prevention and response to gender-based violence in emergencies.
So we are going to spend these 3 years just giving the right information to Kenyans. The first year we'll be talking to duty bearers, holding them to account, and helping the survivors to prosecute their matters. We also have partnered with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and we shall be training the prosecutors in terms of the sensitivity of handling sexual offenses. And we are hoping that this will then get us to more efforts in preserving the evidence and prosecuting the evidence before the court. We have had a chat with the judiciary, and most of the acquitted people is because the courts lack enough evidence. Of course, we can't also rule out issues of corruption within the judiciary, so we also will be working with the judiciary to ensure that we talk to the judges, we talk to the magistrates to understand the survivor's perspective in terms of those cases. In the second year, we'll zero in now to work with the survivors. Being a survivor, to come out and talk about the sexual experience is the most difficult thing. I want to salute and congratulate those that have been able to come out. It takes really courage to come out in public and say, I was raped, I was defiled. In the third year, and this will be an election year, remembering the post-election violence, we want to focus on those times of conflict. How do we help the women to defend themselves?
Everyone here agrees that this campaign is timely and that it is necessary.
This campaign seeks to enlist men to stand in solidarity with women to embrace gender equality. This is one step forward in the fight against sexual and gender-based violence.
The theme of the occasion is timely, that is keeping the promise to end GBV, not by saying the chorus, but we want action.
Stakeholders from government, civil societies, individuals and various organizations with an interest in gender-based violence interventions spoke strongly and passionately to end gender-based violence.
The U.S. government is committed to standing with the Kenyan government to end the scourge of sexual and gender-based violence. Through the U.S. Agency for International Development, we have committed over $5 million to improve detection and response to sexual and gender-based violence in 9 counties.
I am of the opinion that enhancing synergies is the key pillar in dealing SGBV. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions is committed in ensuring that perpetrators of SGBV are professionally and efficiently prosecuted and punished.
It did not escape the stakeholders' observation that more often than not, men who are the main perpetrators of gender-based violence needed to be an integral component in the process of realizing a gender-based violence-free society. The speakers challenged them to ensure they transform from being perpetrators to defenders of women.
A great thinker once said that in the end we remember not the hateful words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. For too long, too many men have remained silent about gender-based violence.
There has been a growing international consensus for engaging men in the promotion of gender equality and in the fight against gender-based violence. Men are the main perpetrators of gender-based violence. Actually, over 90% of all the violence, gender-based violence, and sexual violence that is witnessed in this country is perpetrated by men. And therefore it is important for them to come on board and be able to clean up the mess that is being caused by men.
Men have to lead from the front and promote positive masculinity.
As men, violence against women and children impacts all of us, and hence we must guard against arguments that currently suggest that men are losing wealth, power, status and position, and that women are to blame.
We all play a critical role to end GBV. With the statistics that we've just heard that 90% of the perpetrators are men, we also stand to say we need more and more men to be powerful agents of change.
There are some men out there who are not violent, and those men that are not violent can be key and instrumental in helping those women and girls who've been violated.
Seriously, we cannot do without the men. It is the men to say no to GBV, especially the issue of undressing women in the streets. Really, it should not happen in Kenya today. So we really need the support of men.
I would love the men to treat every woman as either sister or a mother. Once you think of a lady as either your sister, a mother, or a daughter, you will be very protective over them.
To ensure long-term sustainability, the campaign has adopted multi-sectoral approach of inclusivity from individuals to private institutions and government agencies. Each party has been allocated a role to play to ensure the promise of a society free of gender-based violence is realized.
The women would be expecting we help them to prosecute. So I'll be calling on LSK and the other lawyers around. Can we have lawyers signing for pro bono, so that we are in every county, in every town in this country to offer free legal services to the survivors. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, yes, a lot has happened, but I believe we can do more together. I believe that the partners who are here would be willing to work with us, to work with the Office of the DPP, to sensitize their officers in terms of how to prosecute gender or sexual gender-based violence cases.
In the end, it is expected that a transformative shift in perception towards gender-based violence from a culture of tolerance and normalization to a new orientation that affirms accountability and sustainable remedies, society free of gender-based violence vices, is achievable.
We are calling on all Kenyans to come and join us. So we are hoping to see the private sector coming in hand, companies coming in to support this, and we are thinking that we can generate our own capacity in terms of the input in this campaign, so that we are not looking at the donor agencies to continue funding this for 3 years.
This campaign has to start with every single one of us deciding that from this moment forward, we're not going to remain silent in the face of evil.
The duty of stopping gender-based violence lies with all of us, individually and collectively. We have the role to ensure that GBV does not take a center stage in any sphere of our lives, in our society, and more particularly in our homes.
Gender-based violence is a big issue in this country, and that you need everybody on board. And now that the National Gender and Equality Commission, as a coordinating body, has taken the initiative to bring all the duty bearers together to start a 3-year campaign to end gender-based violence, I'm sure you're going to have a big impact.
It's a great campaign. It's time people spoke out about gender-based violence.
It's a worthy campaign since the women here in Kenya, like elsewhere in the world, are entitled to equal rights like men.
The social realities that relegate the role of women to a backseat and expose them to vagaries of human-based injustices can and will be tackled as many unite to ensure they lead in the forefront in keeping the promise to end gender-based violence.
It is important to prevent gender-based violence. We have taken the map of Kenya, and we are thinking that in this campaign we must be able to traverse the whole country on accountability. That this is for all of us. I do not think there's any county I would say does not experience the issues around sexual gender-based violence. And what we are saying is, yes I can, yes you can, and together we can. So I think for us the call on this campaign is let's keep the promise, let's end gender-based violence.